tonight's topic. I hope you caught the movie reference, How Not to Lose a Leader in 10 Days. My name's Kate Lamont. I'm a director in OT at Thrive Aged Care, and of course we've got Kathy Kirby here, director and RN at Thrive Aged Care, who's running today's session. If you haven't been to one of our sessions before, we make a commitment to run a free Lunch and Learn webinar every 2 months, because we really, our mission at Thrive is to help you, the people that work with older people or people living with dementia, to thrive. So we're really keen to share knowledge, skill, expertise and confidence, build your confidence. So that's a little bit about us. Now over to Kath, because we know that time's valuable. So over to you, Kath.
Awesome. Thank you and welcome to you all, and thanks for spending your lunch with us. We're going to start off with an image, and I'm assuming that this image might resonate with some of you as leaders in healthcare or aged care. But I would really love to hear your thoughts and your answer to a couple of questions if you want to pop them in the chat. So who here considers yourself a leader? And how many of you are new to leadership positions or management positions? And how many of you who are here today are feeling overwhelmed with everything that you need to know and that you need to do in your day-to-day work? One other question I'd love for you to answer, and pop all of these in the chat, is what words come to mind when you think of your role as a leader? So what does leadership mean to you, and what has your experience been so far? Now, why are we even talking about leadership today? Because it's such a big topic. But let's have a look at some statistics that we found relating to why people leave their jobs. Now, while a lot of us work in health, we know that we're not particularly in it for the money, are we? But a lot of the times we think that people leave positions because of because of compensation or money. But it's actually, while it's one of the reasons, it's actually one of the main reason why people are leaving their roles. A lot of the reasons are relating to career development and around not feeling supported or having a lack of opportunity within their current positions. So it's really important that we do, if we're in leadership positions ourselves, have a look at our team and how we can support them to feel comfortable and skilled in the role that they undertake, but also how we as leaders can campaign and look after ourselves and look for opportunities to learn how we can do our roles better and how we can advocate to get more support. Okay. Now, I'm going to start off and I'm going to talk about my experience as a new manager. Now, I've been working for 20 years. I'm a registered nurse. And this is a picture of me when I started after my grad year. So my grad year was in 2004. So 20 years ago, which went very quickly, and I loved my grad year. One of my rotations was on a busy medical ward, and I absolutely loved it, and I went back there after my grad year to take on a permanent position. Now, towards the end of my first year, working as a grade 2, I really enjoyed the clinical aspects and the challenges of working with really complex patients. And at that time, an opportunity came up for me for a permanent ANUM position. So I thought, I'm going to give that a go, because I'm somebody who likes to learn new skills, who likes to challenge myself, and I really liked, having additional responsibility. So I applied for the ANUM role and I was successful. So this is me loving my ANUM role, because I really did. It was a great mix of having that clinical side, using my clinical skills and my assessment skills, but also having that new challenge of people management, roster management, critical thinking, future planning. So I was loving life. Yep, I loved going to work every day. Now, as many of you might know, when you work as an ANUM, one of your responsibilities is going to be filling in for your NUM when they have leave. So about 6 months into my role as an ANUM, my NUM was taking 6 weeks off work. She was going on a well-earned holiday. She shoulder tapped me and said, "Hey, Kathy, it's your time. I want you to fill in my position while I'm on holidays." And I was hesitant because I thought I wasn't quite ready for that position. And she assured me that I would be fine. She would run through everything that I needed to know while she was away, and I was filling in for 6 weeks, so not to stress. So, and if she's listening today, because I'm still friends with her, I still love you. It was a great experience, and I still thank you for giving me that. But when I went into that position, as we commonly see when we fill in for our nums, she didn't come back. Yep. So this is me as a num. I was sitting in the role. My 6 weeks went by. I got through it. There were a few challenges, but I thought it's only 6 weeks. I'll do my best to sort of scramble through, and then, you know, we'll deal with it, and I'll ask all these questions when my manager comes back. And then she didn't come back. Or she did come back, actually. She went into a different role in the organisation, but she wasn't coming back to that position. And I was very kindly informed by my manager and by the executive team that they would really like me to stay in the num position. Now, obviously, it was advertised, and at that time, you know, no one wanted a num position. So I did apply because I was assured that I would be supported in the role. And so I ended up being the permanent num. Now, let's have a look a few weeks down the track, or a few months down the track. And this is me handing in my resignation, probably about a month. I'm seeing a few head nods already. Yep. Because when you transition from being an acting num into a permanent num, there seems to be a whole lot of expectations of you doing and knowing things that you don't necessarily know. So I was feeling very overwhelmed. I was working with a team who were very embedded in their practices. They'd been there for a long time. Wasn't necessarily an overly positive culture. I had ANUMs who were undermining me, but didn't want the num role. I had a new group of staff coming through who were young and enthusiastic and really great at their job, but there was that clash of, you know, that culture clash, yeah, with the old and the new, and I'm seeing so many nods. So everyone's resonating so far. So this is me resigning, and I resigned 3 times. 3 times within probably 6 months of becoming a num. And each time, this would be me walking around and handing my resignation letter to the EA of my director. And then very promptly, the director would come back with my resignation and hand it back to me, and would talk to me and say, you know, you're great, you can do this job, we'll help you, we'll support you, and, you know, we'll get you the training that you need. But what do we think happened? Not too much, yeah? So I'm seeing some nods still, because it seems like this is something that we still see around the traps, because we travel a lot. And it's something that this happened, you know, nearly 20 years ago. So while everyone had great expectations and great support for me in my role, the actual knowledge and skills weren't translating into supporting me to feel successful. So I spent a whole lot of time feeling stressed and overwhelmed, and spending a lot of time trying to interpret things that I didn't necessarily need to know, because nobody told me otherwise. Yeah. So what went wrong in this whole process? Well, I put together a list. So the first one was, I had minimal orientation to the num role, yeah? Because when I went in, the ANUM role, I felt very confident, absolutely felt completely across it, absolutely loved it. Felt that the staff had confidence in me. When I filled in for the num role during her holiday, I was just filling in. So I was given the bare basic information. I was basically given, you know, a couple of logins for the budget, told, you know, if it's red, that's bad, just try to find out some more information. Such and such does the rosters, just review them and make sure we don't have gaps on, you know, Friday to Sundays. And these are the meetings that you need to go to. That was pretty much my orientation into the num role. Yep. Then there was also no training in people management. So like I was saying, it was a really challenging culture for me to go into. And imagine, I'm basically a year and a half out of my grad year. So I was 25 when I became a num. So I had minimal clinical experience and very, very minimal management experience. Although I'd always worked, I've been working since I was 14, so I was confident working with people, but managerial skills I didn't have the training for. Yeah. And when you're working in a challenging culture where people have been embedded in practices that are not necessarily the best, it can be a real struggle and it can be very overwhelming when you're trying to manage long-term issues that haven't necessarily been dealt with. I heard a lot of, we will support you in whatever you need. Yep, so I heard a lot of talk and I didn't see much action because it was a lot of trying to build my confidence in my own skill in my role, but there wasn't that additional education behind it to help me actually learn those skills. So I still didn't know what I didn't know. I was put on the spot in meetings as well. So I went to meetings and I would get, you know, my report template that I'd never seen before that I now had to fill in. And then I was asked to please explain about information that I didn't know myself because I didn't know what it meant or where it came from or how to interpret it because it was just provided to me. I received conflicting information, which led to me feeling, you know, some distrust and disbelief that I could make a difference in this role. Because when you're asking for support and you go to, when you're new in a management position, you tend to go to someone who you feel comfortable talking to. And that doesn't necessarily mean that's the right place to go. It's where we go because we feel confident and comfortable to ask those questions. When in fact, maybe we should be going to a specific department to ask for that education and support. The main thing that made my role challenging was that I asked for help and I didn't receive it. So like I was saying, I resigned 3 times before there was action taken. And even then it was pretty much me self-directing. And when you're self-directing, trying to find information that you're not sure you should even know in the first place, it adds a lot of time to your day. It adds a lot of layers of work to you that you don't necessarily need to do. So that all sounds very, you know, down, but I think it's something that we see around the trap still. We see when we go to facilities that we have a lot of new leaders coming in. We have a lot of new RNs, particularly in aged care, who may not have had a grad year or maybe 1 year out of a grad year, and they're now going into aged care and they're working as a clinical care coordinator or they're working as a facility manager, and they've got minimal clinical experience and expertise and nil or very little management experience. So we need to pause and we need to look at how we can successfully support our leaders so that we can maintain them. Because we know that in health and aged care, we have issues with retention. And why do we have issues with retention? Because we don't support our staff. That's what it comes down to. People don't leave jobs if they feel supported and feel confident in the work that they're doing. So that's where our gap is. So how do we support our new leaders when they come into our workforce? I kind of ran through this already, but what did it lead to when we don't address these things? It's time wasting. So we don't have enough time as it is in our day to get all of these changes in, particularly if you work in aged care, there's reforms happening every week. You know, there's all these legislation changes. If you work in acute care, everywhere, the complexities of patients and residents is increasing. There's a lot more expectations. So if we're spending a lot of time trying to address issues, but we don't know how to address them in the right way, then we're going this way when we should be going this way. So we're spending a lot of time wasted, yeah, which we don't have. We have time where we're stressed, you know, so if you're working as a new leader and you're trying to fix a problem yourself and you don't know if you're doing the right thing or where to go, then you're wasting time and you have increased stress, yeah. I spent so much time, and I use these examples a lot, but I won't put them in today, of trying to fix a problem myself because I would jump straight to the solution because I thought I knew what the solution was to a problem, but I hadn't actually investigated the problem in the first place. So I didn't know. So when I was trying to find a solution, I was going down the wrong track because I hadn't been taught how to actually look at the information and assess it to find out what the problem actually is rather than what I perceive it to be. Yeah. And it was a lot of time as well for my management team, so the additional leaders above me, trying to keep me in the role in the first place. Yeah. So like I was saying, what's changed? 2005, this happened to me. It's now 2024. So what's changed? Increased complexities for the people we work for. Work hasn't got easier. It's got a lot more complicated. We have more expectations from our community and what they expect to receive from us. We've got all these legislation changes, industry reforms. We've got more reporting requirements, either internally or externally or both. We've got increased expectations of our managers and leaders. We've got recruitment and retention issues because we know we had a mass exodus in COVID. We've lost a lot of experience in health and aged care, and we were trying to rebuild that. So we've got a lot of new green staff coming through. And like I was saying, we've got staff being put into leadership positions or putting their hands up, because I put my hand up to be an ANUM, to work in a leadership position. But we also have staff who are being put into position who have that limited experience. And if we don't do something differently, then we're going to have and people don't feel supported, then we're going to have those poor retention rates. So where does leadership actually start? When people feel that, we love a bit of Simon Sinek. This is a quote from Simon Sinek, and we've put a link at the end of this presentation. When people feel safe enough to raise their hands and say, I made a mistake or I need some help, the leader has created an environment where people feel safe to be themselves. That's what we want to work for as leaders. So we're all leaders, I'm assuming, for the people who are here, well, you are leaders because you put your hand up to come along today. So how can you create a supportive environment for your teams to be able to come to you and say, I need help, or ask a question? Yeah. A leader doesn't necessarily mean that you are in a management position. You can be a leader who is an influential person working on the floor, or who working in food services. Yeah. So a leader is somebody who can initiate and support change. Yeah, so you want to set up a culture where people can ask for help. So we've got a few top tips here from my experience myself, and also from what we see when we go around to different facilities, different health networks. Tip number one, as a leader, you are not going to know everything. Why you said, if you're a leader and you put your hand up for a position, or you're being shoulder tapped for a position, then you assume that you've got expectations that that you can fulfill this role successfully. Yeah, that does not mean that you need to know absolutely everything, or that you are expected to know everything. Sometimes we interpret that people think we should know things and we don't need to know them. Yep. So we put that added pressure on ourselves because we think, oh my gosh, how can I not know this? I've been in this position for 3 months and now I've got this report and I don't know what it means. And we start talking in our head and saying, well, we should have known this. We should know this, but we don't necessarily need to. Okay. So ask questions, lots of questions. If you don't know what something means, then get somebody to explain it to you, and feel confident to go to the appropriate source. If you're new in a leadership position, you have probably got people who you feel comfortable to go and ask questions to, but they're not necessarily going to be able to answer the questions correctly. So find yourself a mentor, someone in your position who has more experience, or someone more senior, and set up times to meet with them and have some mentoring so that you can ask these kind of questions, because you want to make sure you're getting the right information. Don't assume that you need to, or you should know something just because you receive it in an email as well. How many times have we opened up our email and we read something and we think, I have no idea what they're talking about. Where has this come from? Yep. Just because it comes in a written form doesn't mean it's something that you should have known about either. Yep. Like I was saying, be proactive. Don't stick to your comfort zone. By all means, have your support person who you can sit and debrief with and run ideas past. But when you're trying to learn new skills, and it is new skills if you're stepping into a new role, find somebody outside of that to help you. And write a list of questions down. So if something pops up, because we all get busy, I remember my to-do list is the same still. It gets longer. You cross a few things off and then you add 10 things to it. Yep. So have another list where you write down questions that you want to ask or things that you want to learn. Be a little bit proactive, yeah, to help yourself. And because when you're proactive and you start asking questions, it's going to get your organisation to start thinking, hey, this is things that we need to talk about. These are things that we need to communicate better, because we don't know what we don't know either as managers. The next top tip is You cannot do everything yourself, and you shouldn't be doing everything yourself. Yeah. You need to meet with people from other departments. So plenty of times we do mentoring at Thrive, and I've spoken to new leaders and they're trying to fix a problem around recruitment themselves. That's not just your job. We have plenty of departments around. We have HR departments. Yeah. So when you're trying to fix an issue, if you're having trouble, let's say recruiting, don't try and look at, how am I going to fix this problem by myself? Have a look at other managers' areas, who hasn't got an EFT vacancy? What are they doing differently? How are they recruiting? How are they getting staff on board? Speak to your HR department. How do you advertise? Where do you advertise? What's in my actual advertisement in the first place? Does it match what the work is? So utilize the other departments in your organisation. Education is another department. Your quality manager or your quality and clinical governance team. Yeah. If you've got an issue with falls or an issue with medication management, pick the phone up and say, hey, can we have a conversation? I've got an issue here and I don't know how to address it. This is what I'm thinking. Can you come and have a conversation? There are plenty of people out there. Everyone has different roles. Everyone has different skill sets. So make sure you use them. Share the load as well. So being a leader isn't about doing everything yourself or by delegating everything to everybody else either. It's about supporting a team to understand why something needs to happen. So if you're trying to implement a change, you need to be able to communicate why that change is coming in to your team and then get your team to start implementing that change. Yeah. So you need to involve people because sometimes, and I did this as a new manager, I had great ideas. Amazing ideas of how I was going to fix problems. Kate's laughing. She's heard all these examples. And then I go straight to the solution. I'm like, this is what we're going to do to fix the problem. And then everyone gets their back up. Everyone raises their hands and says, no, I'm not doing that because the solution actually doesn't address the issue because I wasn't aware of all of the information because I was trying to fix the problem by myself. And I wanted to take the pressure off my team. But in fact, I was adding more pressure because in their eyes, I was adding workload for them that was useless. Yep. So by having that conversation and working with others and working directly with your team and asking questions, it's actually going to save you time. That is true leadership, is getting people on board with your message. Yep. And that comes down to your communication. So communicating with your team, with your clients or your residents and with your manager as well. So if you've got a challenge that you're facing and you're trying to come up with a solution, then speak to your manager. Another top tip I haven't put in here though is try and come up with a solution yourself when you're asking for help. Yep. Don't just have a list of I've got all of these issues and I need somebody to, direct me. Try and come up with, try and work out why it's an issue and try and come up with a few ideas yourself before you go for help as well, because it helps drive that conversation. Yeah. This is my favorite one. Question things. I cannot stand doing things for the sake of doing things because it's a ticker box. And so many times this happens in health because it's been done for the last, 10 or so years. Now, very, very quick example. I was handed the auditing portfolio when I was an ANUM, and I got given these audit tools, which were completely useless. They were paper-based. You could handpick your patient histories. It was retrospective. So basically, for example, the falls audit you would complete, you'd get 100% because you can handpick all of the falls assessments that were actually completed. And you do that, and we'd been 100% compliant for God knows how many years. Well, do you think our falls rate had improved? No, because the audit tool was completely useless. It wasn't gathering any information that was practical. Depending on who did it was whether they did it correctly or whether they just wanted to tick a box. So why am I wasting my time? So question things. Don't just do something because you're asked to do it if it doesn't make sense. And that's the great thing about being in a new leadership role as well, is you see things from a different lens. So people are often happy to hear, oh, that doesn't work. Oh, okay. Oh, or we shouldn't have been doing that. We've now got this different tool that we're using. So don't just do things because you're asked to if it doesn't make sense. Ask questions and challenge. Information is data and data needs to be interpreted. So if you receive something that doesn't make sense, then question it. Or if you're looking at your clinical incident data, for example, really break down that information and try to work out what the message is telling you rather than just looking at those whole numbers. Really break it down to help, again, direct your time. And ask why. Why is our favorite, that should be our slogan, really. Why? Why am I doing this? Why am I receiving this information? Why is this a problem? Why are we doing it this way? And what do you do with the information when I send it to you? And we had an example just last week of somebody who was brave after we'd done an education session with them and went and asked why when they received a report and what this particular lot of information meant. Because she didn't understand it, and she got told, oh, actually, that's not meant for you, so you don't need to worry about it and you shouldn't have received it. Now, before that session, she would have spent a whole lot of time trying to interpret and work out why she didn't know what this information was and what it was meant to mean to her, and it actually meant nothing to her, and she didn't need to receive it in the first place. So how much time has she just saved by asking that simple question? Yeah, sometimes we need to be a little bit brave to get started with the conversation. Pause and take a breath. Yeah. Before you rush into taking action or reacting, just take a breath. Yeah, like I was saying, I had all these great ideas and I jumped straight to a solution and I went completely down the wrong direction because I just jumped straight in. Yeah. Oftentimes we think we've got the answer because, sometimes we're on the right direction, but sometimes we're completely not. Yeah. So we need to make sure that we have all the information and it doesn't come back to us. It's not all about us. Yeah. We've got a whole team of people around us directly, and we've got a whole external team within our organisation as well. So use all of that information and don't make assumptions. And managing people is really, really hard. It's not something that you learn in 5 minutes. We have different personality types. We do a personality trait quiz when we run some of our programs because it gets people to start thinking about how we like to be communicated with and how we function and what information we like to receive and how that might look for our team members and how we can start communicate, how we can use that knowledge to help manage people, because everyone has their work life and their home life. There's lots of things going on. There's lots of challenges and stresses out there. And, if you're managing people, you can take a lot of that on board. So it is not an easy job. It is not something that you should expect yourself or your team members to know how to do 5 minutes into a job. Yeah. So get some support, have some mentoring around how to manage people. Yeah. How to communicate with people, how to address, performance issues, because it's a specialty area. And set people up for success. So if you're a leader, or you guys are all leaders, think about how you came into this role and how supported you felt. What were the gaps? Have you communicated with anyone what the gaps are in your knowledge? Yep. Because it's not just you. I can tell you it's not just you, because I'm talking about issues from 20 years ago and they're still happening now. And we have seen them across Australia. So these are things that we need to raise, and we need to start looking at how we can support our leaders. So orientation program, yeah, not just, one-on-one, look at all the departments in your organisation, sharing the information about what they do, how they do it, and what support they can offer. So think about having a structured program. Buddy shifts, we've got this whole concept of 2 buddy shifts and off you go. It doesn't work, yeah? So yes, you can have those 2 buddy shifts, but you also need to think about your new leaders who are new clinicians and are also new in management positions as well, because 2 buddy shifts and off you go is not going to cut it. And that's why we see people leaving, in particular in the aged care sector. Okay, so we need to do things differently. Be flexible and proactive, because everyone has different learning needs. Everyone needs different levels of support. Maybe somebody needs a little bit of one-on-one mentoring, for the first couple of months. Maybe someone needs a manager on site, for an hour once a week to run through things. Yeah. So everyone's going to be different. It's not a one-stop shop for everybody. Investing in your teams is really important, because if you don't invest, like we saw in that first slide, if you don't invest, people leave because they don't feel supported or they don't feel skilled in their role. So if someone needs education or mentoring, you know, a short-term financial investment or an investment in time is going to save you a lot of time and money and stress in the future. Yep. And we all need to be open to receiving feedback and the data that we receive. You know, people, people are telling you something for a reason. Data is information that we need to interpret. So we need to look at that, and we need to look at our trends, and we need to come up with a plan based on that. So our final message, again, bit of Simon Sinek, love him. He's got some great videos. It's better to endure the discomfort of the truth now than to suffer the discomfort of the lie later. So if people are telling, you know, if you've got people leaving your organisation left, right and centre, if you can't hold somebody in a management position, or if you've got people who are not fulfilling their roles, you know, we need to ask what the issue is. Yep, and we need to address that issue, because if we don't address the issue now, and while we might not feel comfortable with what we're told, then we're not going to fix that problem. We're going to be having the same conversation in another 20 years' time. Yep. So it's time for change. Now I'm 1 minute over, but I did put Simon Sinek's website in there. He's got some great stuff around leadership. But we'd like to thank you for coming along today. I'm happy to stay on for a couple of minutes if anyone wants to chat or has any questions. But in terms of further education, we do have an online practical approach to clinical governance and leadership program. We'll send you a link to that if you're interested in learning a little bit more detail around clinical governance or data or communication and change management. We cover a lot of those topics in our videos and this online on-demand training program. So this was developed after our own experiences. Kate's had the same as me, and based on the needs of the sector. So happy to have a chat to you about that if you are interested. Finally, we have a quick feedback survey, because we would love to know what you thought about the session today. We would also love to hear your thoughts on what you would like covered in our topics for these presentations. Like Kate was saying, we do them bi-monthly, and we do it based on trends or feedback from participants. So again, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to stay on, but otherwise, thank you very much and hope to see you next time.